Welcome, Blood Brothers and Sanguine Sisters, to the Deeply Discussing Dexter podcast. I am your host, Dale Maxfield. I'm joined by Aaron Caldwell.
Hello.
Brooke Merritt.
Hello.
And Zach Rowland.
Hey.
And today's episode is Season 1, Episode 3, Popping Cherry. Popping Cherry, what's that about? Well, it's about a hooker named Cherry who gets killed, which automatically is my nomination for the worst line of the week. Is the title of the episode, Popping Cherry. So, yeah.
Which they mentioned once, her name once.
Yeah, well, they say her real name is Sherry, and then they call her Cherry for the rest of the episode, because that was her hooker name. So overall, what did you guys think of this episode?
I actually, I enjoyed it. I did. I don't know. I mean, definitely the name is not a one that I always favor because it just sounds weird. But I like the progress of the episode, and then I like certain events that took place in the episode, and then also the way that Dexter handles certain things. So I guess, yeah, it's interesting because I'm still feeling like, oh, I guess the show gets terrible, but I'm still really enjoying rewatching it at this point. So I like.
Oh yeah, we got a ways to go before it's objectively terrible.
Okay, good, because I'm into it. I'm into it again.
Yeah, I like this one too. You know, when I watched the pilot, I was like, I don't know why I like this, but really last week and this week, I'm reminded of what was good about the show. This was a good episode.
Mm-hmm.
See, I thought the exact opposite. I felt like this episode, everything just screeched to a halt, and it was like a holding pattern.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree. I felt like after the pace of the last two episodes, there was a lot of things going on in the first two episodes. You were getting a lot of information, and there was a lot of forward momentum. This one seems like it's setting up a bunch of stuff for episodes to come, and there's not a whole lot of forward action in this particular episode. Not that it's bad, I just felt like there was a lot less going on here than there was in episodes 1 and 2.
Yeah, I could agree to that. I definitely feel like there was something there's something to that in storytelling, though, and I think sometimes even with great shows like Breaking Bad or Game of Thrones, there are some episodes that don't go anywhere. And so, I definitely see what you guys mean by that for sure in certain moments, but at the same time, I'm totally okay with it at that point too, you know?
This one was lacking more, I would say, in the character development end of things that compared to last week, but, you know, it still wasn't a bad episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, nothing of note happens.
Yeah, there's very few, memorable things that, you know, again, I think this is more of a foundational episode, and I think after the first two, they're purposefully kind of slowing down the action so that they have a full, you know, they have 10 more episodes to tell their story. But we start with the murdered cop's funeral, who we met in the last episode. His wife had also been killed, and she was having an affair with Dokes. That plot thread kind of continues through to where Dokes goes and confronts Cervantes' daughter at her confirmation party, and Dokes makes kind of a big scene about how this guy went after a cop's family, and so he's not going to play by the rules anymore. And that leads to friends of the dead cop who have figured out that Dokes was having the affair, revealing that they really are trying to set him up with Cervantes because they know about him and Karen, and they didn't agree to that.
I thought this was a pretty good plot line for Dokes because you kind of find out somewhat of the man that he is. You know, he has a chance to do something to one of Cervantes' lieutenants, and he doesn't. I just thought that was a good note that there's a line he won't cross.
But then you also have him going to, you know, the Cervantes' daughter's party too, on the other hand. So he has some boundaries, but they're not very good boundaries.
I just want to talk about how well dressed he is in this episode. It seems like he finally got it together. He knows what he looks good in, and it's a suit, and that's great because Dokes is definitely like that guy that, like, if he wears like a polo, I don't find it like he's an intimidating guy, but like I think him in a suit, it almost makes him sort of like equal status of like gangsters or mob bosses or whatever it is. Like there's something about a well-tailored suit that gives Dokes that ability to play whatever game he needs to play with these guys, right? I mean, the guy's got it going on.
Rather than showing up looking like he's been playing the game of golf.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a big improvement. Yeah.
Well, and him in anything with short sleeves is just like busting out at the bicep because he's so jacked.
Well, I mean, he hardly wears a suit in this show.
That's true.
From this point on, it's pretty much back to the Tiger Woods gear.
Disappointing. I really
he's only in a suit for the funerals. So sorry, Zach.
That's all right. I'll live.
So then we get to the target of the episode, which is Jeffrey Downs, who is being released early from a prison sentence. I guess Florida has either Florida or Miami Metro, which is a made-up thing. There's no such thing as Miami Metro. They have some kind of a early release program because of overcrowding, and Dexter has his eye on this guy that he thinks is a burgeoning serial killer. This is another thing that they are establishing in the series, that on top of all of the serialized parts of the show, the plot of the show, Dexter has these one-off target of the episode characters that he goes and kills. In this case, he tracks him to a place where he's buying knives, I guess some kind of street fair or something. And then that leads to a flashback of Harry showing him guns and Dexter asking Harry what it feels like to kill someone. And we get Harry saying, killing must serve a purpose, otherwise it's just plain murder. And there's a scene where Harry shoots a deer and Dexter kills it with a knife.
I actually really enjoy that scene, the flashback, because it starts off right after Dexter asks him to explain how it feels to kill somebody. Harry says, you're not just killing him, you're killing everything he was and everything he will ever be. I really like that line.
Yeah, I mean, that's murder, right? I mean, that guy never gets to grow out of whatever it is that he's in trouble for.
Yeah, I like that explanation.
This is also where Harry says, I only fire my weapon to save a life. That's my code. Or a code I live by, were his words. So we get a little more into Harry's code because he specifically says, that's a code I live by.
Yep.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because it does bring up that idea of the code in what Harry's code for Harry is, and then what Harry's code for Dexter is, and also just also being like myself, a child of like a stepfather, or in Dexter's case, this is a foster father. That like importance of a father figure or a parental figure in general, and the words that they use and the things that they say and how they use them, it's so crucial. So I will give the show much applause for that, because it does make it seem like it's very intentional and purposeful based on character development, which I really like.
Yeah, and it's showing you that Harry is coming up with the rules for Dexter to keep Dexter safe, but that Harry also has his own sort of ethical code, his ethical decision lines of why he does what he does.
Yeah.
And how much of that is Dexter adapting and kind of making his own as he takes the code that he says that Harry gave him, how much is he really adapting it to fit his own needs as he goes and progresses?
Yeah. So Dexter tracks Barnes, the target, to a wooded area. They're supposedly going to look for an alligator. Dexter shows up and just kind of scares them off, and then nearly steps on an alligator. And then when he gets back to his car, his window's been smashed and his wallet's been stolen. Dexter later catches up with the guy and finds out that the guy that he killed had raped him, and that he wasn't just a thrill killer or a serial killer like Dexter is. So he doesn't meet Dexter's code, and Dexter says, if you return my wallet, I won't follow you, I'll leave you alone.
I really didn't believe him. I mean, it probably sounds awful to say, but, like, I don't know. I mean, Dexter at the beginning of the episode says, and of course, obviously this is all written by the writers, but, like, he says that when he looked at the work that this kid had done, it had been purposeful, it had been meaningful, it wasn't just random. And then later on, this kid knows his life is jeopardized right at this point, right? Because, like, this guy's got a syringe, probably got a knife, he's overpowering him, and and he's a troubled kid, so he might say anything to get out of anything. He's kind of acting tough, right? Like, he says, "You're gonna rape me like that the other guy? I'll kill you too," you know. And so, I mean, it's like, is he saying something just to say it, to get out of it, or like to be threatening? Because maybe it was the actor or whatever. It just didn't seem like he was honest about it. And then Dexter just believes it, and he's like, okay, we'll give him my wallet, I'm out of here then.
Yeah, just like that, it's over.
Yeah, like, show me some, maybe it's not, but, show me some proof, I guess, or like, he's like, why didn't you say anything in court? Well, would you, I mean, yeah, right? Like, if it's going to make a difference on whether or not you're going to be convicted as a murderer, I mean, like, yeah, it was self-defense, the guy raped me and I killed him. There you go.
And he was getting ready to pull a knife on the other kid in the woods, too. No matter how you slice it, they were having this kind of, pardon the pun, but they were kind of having this face-off. There was no reason for him to go for the knife.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't make sense. I agree. I felt the same way. Would Dexter really just be like, oh, well, if you say so, never mind.
Yeah, it felt like something that they're dangling for later, and I don't remember for sure if that kid comes back or not. I don't think he does, but it seems like the sort of thing where Dexter would let that guy off, and then it would go, he would end up killing somebody later, and Dexter would feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
You should have written the show, because that's what they should have done. Brought him back as a big bad.
Well, or just have him show up down the line, in another episode where he's accused of
they should have
killing somebody. And I don't remember if that does happen, so I'm not taking credit for it if we do get to a later episode, and that's the idea that it was. So. But.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way, and that's what I thought too. And I was like, oh, that's fun and creative. Let's bring in characters early on that Dexter forgives or whatever, so that later on he feels guilty about when they really turn out to be the monsters that he's hunting anyway. But that's on them if they don't use that.
So then we have Dexter helping plant a lemon tree in Rita's yard. A bad dude shows up and takes Rita's car in payment for money that Paul owed her. And I can't remember what exactly it was supposed to be paying for, but it seemed like a really high price to be paying for whatever it was.
Cindy owed him like 2 kilos.
Was it
2 ounces of cocaine?
2 kilos.
No, not 2 kilos. 2 ounces, guys.
2 ounces. I don't know. I didn't know enough about cocaine, apparently.
I think it was 2 ounces.
Should have been a lot more cocaine, apparently, for a car.
Yeah,
so apparently it's like $20,000 an ounce.
No. 2 ounces of cocaine is about what a used RAV4 would cost.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I need to brush up on my drug costs.
Kilos is like what Dale will say, like 20, maybe like 20 grand. Like an ounce is probably 3-ish thousand, maybe, depending on how good it is, where you get it from. Not that I know.
Do you think?
Hey, we know who we need to talk to if we have questions about our drug dealers and if they're over or undercharging us.
Do you think Kelly Blue Book breaks it down, like how much a RAV4 is worth in coke?
Yeah.
I feel like that we should send an email or something.
Well, it depends on how much it was stepped on. I'm talking about the car and the coke, how much it was stepped on.
That's for sure.
So yeah, Rita tells Dexter not to get involved. She just wants Paul out of her life, so she just gives up on the car, basically. And Dexter's stuck giving Rita rides to and from work. He also ends up showing up at her house to help with a CPS visit to make sure that she's not abusing the kids and they have places to sleep and all that kind of stuff. There's like a social worker that comes by.
Sorry, I just wanted to say real quick that I appreciate that they finally let us know what Rita does as a job. We get to see her at the job, at the hotel desk.
Of course, that's what she does. Of course,
Super sweet.
Hospitality.
It makes perfect sense. Yes, had to be.
So yeah, and then in the end of the episode, Dexter's narrating over Rita watering the lemon tree. The kids are selling lemonade. Dexter's brought in a impounded car that Rita can use, which looks completely hilarious. It's some kind of convertible. And Dexter's line that closes the episode is "Score one for the little wooden boy."
There's also a good line when he was planting the tree. They were talking about Rita's green thumb, and she said, "I can't help it, I kill things." And he says, "That must be awful." That was also a good little...
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that he's like, well, he says, the little wooden boy, because, obviously he's referencing Pinocchio and the lack of emotions or the lack of reality that Pinocchio has. And again, he talks this game of not being able to relate to people or know what needs to be happening in the moment with his girlfriend or these other things. But like he does, at least the actor Michael C. Hall does have a really interesting way of portraying those emotions on his face in certain moments, like that moment where she did say that I kill everything, and he says that that must be awful, because obviously he wants to just be like, yeah, me too, or whatever. So it's funny that the way he references himself some points I feel like is an interesting choice of writing, or a way that he references himself, because like he's not that wooden, like he's pretty animated for what he does and how he acts. Or
I think what he's getting at there, and the score one part of it in particular, is that he doesn't know that bringing her a car is necessarily the right thing to do. And so he's pleasantly surprised when she's happy about it. From his perspective, he doesn't read those social cues well enough, and so he might have just as easily walked into a situation where she was like, well, why did you do this? I wanted to spend more time with you, and us driving to work every day was a great way to spend time together. And he would have been at a loss for how to solve that problem.
Well, a great example of that in the episode is when she's crying in the bathroom after the thug comes and steals the car, and Dexter comes up to the door and asks, do you need toilet paper? Like, he just has no clue how to interact or how to comfort her at all. He doesn't know what he's doing. So he's just guessing the right thing to do and the right thing to say.
Yes.
And sometimes he nails it, sometimes he fails.
Yeah. Yep. So he scored with the Pimpmobile. I don't know what to call it. It's like the
That's probably
Corvette.
the best way to explain it. It's a Pimpmobile.
Had like,
those were some sweet red velvet seats, though.
yeah, like the shag carpeting on the doors, and yeah, good stuff.
Nice.
was the decal of Jesus on the hood?
If only.
Jesus is the motor, my man. There's a scene at Miami Metro where Masuka, Angel, and Dexter are looking at a crime scene photo, and Masuka starts talking up some new office hottie, and Angel, who for some reason is a lot less sensitive than he usually is on the show, calls her a butterface and explains what a butterface is to Dexter. And then Angel starts describing what pulling a Bronco is, and Deb walks up and just by what he's miming says, "Oh, you're telling him about the Bronco, huh?"
Yeah, who was Angel in this episode? Who was this guy? We never saw him before, we never see him again. It's just like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, somebody took over, because that was not a typical characterization of him.
Yeah, I think they just hadn't decided yet that he was going to be a central character on the show, or they thought that they would have him change around at some point or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I get the idea of having this sort of, as the most powerful man in the world would say, locker room talk at a police station among a bunch of guys. But it is weird for Angel to be the one talking like that. That's total Masuka territory.
That's not surprising at all.
It's funny seeing it because Angel, for lack of better explanation, he kind of later becomes a moral center for the show.
Absolutely.
He's he's by far the character that is most loyal and has a strict code of how he does things.
And that kind of happens by default because he's not as temperamental as Deb. Otherwise, Deb would be kind of the conscience of the show, or the center, the sort of emotional center of the show. But we can't trust LaGuerta. Masuka's just a perv. So
Dexter is clearly a serial killer.
Yeah.
And Dokes just does whatever the fuck Dokes wants to do.
Yes. Including getting himself probably in huge trouble with the mafia.
Yeah.
Does anything but put on a clown mask to go assault a lieutenant. Draws the line for him.
Yeah, he just runs down the road, which is one of the funniest scenes. Like unintentionally.
Yeah, just right down the middle. Yes. He doesn't even try to go off the side. He doesn't take the sidewalk. He just runs in the most well-lit part of the street.
He's Dokes. He doesn't have time for that.
Really glad he's who's out there serving and protecting. It's really good choices on his part.
I'm just expecting all the calls to the police. Like, there's a really muscular black man running down the middle of our road. He looks really scared.
really smooth on his part.
Yeah. Okay. So the last thing we have is the most important, or the A plot of the episode, which is about the ice truck killer. There's a new body that's left on the hockey rink in one of the goal nets. Dexter's super impressed with it. The security tape from the period that the killer left the body is missing, so they don't have a visual on what he looked like. And so Dokes and LaGuerta suspect the hockey rink night watchman. And Deb disagrees, but she gets sent off she goes and talks to the hookers. They give her a lead on what the car looks like, and the hookers point out to Deb that LaGuerta is her pimp, which was great. It was like, this is someone that tells you what to do? Yeah. She's your pimp.
Does she take the credit for things that you find out or get? Yeah. So she's always taking something from her. Yeah. You know what's funny too is, like, we're thinking back to the one of the earlier episodes when she's like, Morgan, I didn't recognize you without your clothes off, or clothes on or whatever. Yeah. That's something a pimp might say, I think. So I think they were...
Well, and then she said in this episode, I hope you brought your tube top. I think she said something like that.
Yeah, do you still have your tube top?
That's it.
Yeah, right.
And this is the same woman at the end of last episode said, I'm glad that sexual harassment training worked out for everybody.
Yeah. And so Deb gets in trouble.
Oh, yeah, because she goes and talks to Matthew with all the evidence that Angel finds a little bit later in the episode. They find the security tape, and LaGuerta immediately jumps to the fact that it's the night watchman. But then Angel looks at the tape and says that if you look, when he's setting up the body in the ice rink, he's looking off towards the camera as if somebody's directing him. And that's what she takes to Matthews instead of going to LaGuerta.
Deb's conversation with the hookers, there's another great exchange. It happens twice in that same scene where they're surprised that she was an undercover cop, and they're like, you're still a whore. And Deb's like, I'm not a fucking whore. And then one of the other hookers is like, what's wrong with being a whore? That happens twice.
Yeah, Deb's not playing to her audience very well in that one.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think Deb ever plays well with her audience.
No. LaGuerta says that Jeb Bush himself signed off on this, like, warrant for the night watchman. So they go and she goes and does a press conference and names the night watchman as the killer in the press conference.
I feel like the name dropping of Jeb Bush was wonderful. Because, like, she said it like she expected everybody to clap, and I'm just like, please clap.
Yeah, of course he's involved. She got the governor to sign the warrant for some reason. Yeah. I don't know. So yeah, that's it for the Ice Truck Killer this week. And like I said, as far as things moving forward in the episode, there's not a whole lot going on there in Ice Truck Killer land. We've just got this red herring that the audience pretty much knows is a red herring and everyone else doesn't. And for people listening to the podcast wondering if I've incurred the wrath of God, there is a thunderstorm happening over my house right now. So
I was hearing something.
Yeah. So the last thing is my favorite little Easter egg in this episode, which is evil Denise Crosby. We flash back to Harry in a hospital. Dexter and Deb are there, which it's the real actors, Michael C. Hall and Jennifer Carpenter, both there in silly wigs to make them look younger. And they introduce Harry's nurse, who is systematically poisoning him. And she's played by Denise Crosby, a.k.a. early Star Trek The Next Generation's Lieutenant Yar.
And for me, it's the mom from Pet Sematary. As soon as I see her, That's all I think of.
My question is, were they silly wigs or were they wonderful?
Yeah,
they were awful.
No, I really liked Emo Dexter. I think he's probably my favorite.
Emo Dexter is amazing.
One of my favorite Dexters.
The Deb one's particularly bad. When they try and make her 17 years old and they just put more hair on top of her head. It just doesn't work.
Well, there's also that, and they take off the baggy suit she's wearing, so you see that obviously the check from Dexter's first few episodes haven't come through. She still can't afford food.
Yeah.
She's so skinny. Bless her heart.
My favorite and possibly least favorite, I'm on the fence about this line of the episode, is evil Denise Crosby going into her apartment looking for her cat and saying, "Are you trapped behind the couch again, Mr. Tinker Stinker?"
I don't see what's wrong with that line. It's great.
It's just hilarious. It's
a great name for your cat.
Denise Crosby in general makes me laugh in this episode. It's like, you're not on Star Trek The Next Generation. You're playing bit parts on these little TV shows now. It's so sad.
What kills me is, as she's saying that, the couch is, out in the open. So there's no way the cat is trapped behind it.
Unless it's a 600-pound cat.
I guess. My 600-pound life early episodes.
So yeah, Dexter says that she was his first victim. He does a terrible job of stopping her. She's bigger than he is. She nearly gets away from him, but he gets her into some kind of a lock and knocks her out and puts her on the table. And then he finds a scrapbook in her house with articles about all the people that she's poisoned. She says she helped them. She took their pain away. And Dexter says, "Now I'm going to take your pain away," and stabs her in the heart. So, little Dexter. I imagine that I'd have to think Denise Crosby's probably bigger than Michael C. Hall in real life, which is probably why they did it like that to make him look younger in comparison. Because in that fight, she really looks like she's got the upper hand.
Well, at that point, isn't he supposed to be in his late teens?
Yeah, he's young.
So.
Yeah, I guess I'm okay with them doing that in terms of the show not using another actor to be the late teens Dexter. As dumb as it looks and as crazy as the wigs are, I kind of appreciate that, because then it does fit the face to the devil himself. We finally see this is the killer this is the only Dexter we know that kills people, is this face. And size wise, she definitely looked like she could take him, but it was still good that they chose to use Michael C. Hall in that moment for me.
Well, I mean, she used all of her training as chief security officer of the Enterprise.
Didn't she body check him?
To take him down. Yeah.
She just shoulder rings him. Yeah. It's a great scene, and do you remember how he kills her? Because it's very hesitant. He's not sure if he's going to do it.
Yeah, he tightens the hood around his face and then he stabs her. And he's completely freaked out by the blood spray. He didn't see it coming. I loved that scene because I thought it was played so well, and it was really funny too because the cat's sitting there watching and purring, and he's hesitating and getting sprayed with blood and seems a little bit like taken aback by it, which is funny because we know where he ends up.
He pulls that hood so it's closed like at his nose basically, which I guess is as far as he could get it. But then it does show the blood going everywhere.
The truth is, he learned his lack of emotion from that cat. That cat couldn't have given a damn.
The cat did not care. The cat loved it. The cat was purring. The cat was happy. This is revenge for that stupid ass name you gave me.
I was gonna say cats are the all the proof you need that the Earth isn't flat. Because if it was, a cat would have pushed everything off the side by now.
That's fair.
I'll tell my cat that. Didn't he say that something about he was admiring her notebook or her collection of like articles? Because it's the same as him, right? Like it kind of in essence he took that idea from her in the way that she was killing people to help people or whatever. I did air quotes there for the listeners, to help people, and so like that idea then of cataloging your kills, she essentially gave him that idea. But
she inspired the slides.
Yeah.
Which he doesn't take a slide of hers at this point, but I would imagine that that's something that starts somewhere during his collegiate training or his path to becoming a blood spatter analyst, that he decides on keeping the blood slides as his trophies.
Yeah, good on her. Yeah.
Yep. And Denise Crosby only got one episode out of it. It's heartbreaking. She just can't get a break.
Another good thing about the evil Denise Crosby scenes is we get to see the James Remar like in a fetal position in a hospital bed shivering. James
Remar in his like spooky gray like wispy beard that he's starting to grow.
Yeah.
It's like, she's giving me too much. Yeah. Harry's been smoking ganja and he's paranoid that that's what's happening, so she's an innocent that Dexter had to die. Dexter had to kill, I mean. So that's it for the plot. This was the third episode in a row directed by Michael Cuesta. He's got 2 more this season coming up, and the writer was Daniel Cerrone, who was a writer and story editor on Charmed. He was the executive producer on the first 2 seasons of Dexter and wrote 6 episodes. If you look online, there are some Paley Center videos that they made in New York with some of the cast and the executive producers. Sarah Colleton's there, Clyde Phillips, the showrunner's there, and Daniel Cerrone is there. And Daniel Cerrone comes across as like the most knowledgeable on the panel about all things Dexter. They ask a lot of character questions to the actors, and then he usually pipes in and gives a little bit more background on top of that, because there's things that they were thinking of in the writing room that didn't necessarily make it into scenes. And now he works on The Blacklist. He's a writer and executive producer on there. So what do we think our best line of the episode is?
Are we going for the "Are you trapped behind the couch again," or are we saving that for worst line?
I have it written down as worst at the moment, but I'd be happy to put the title of the episode in for the worst line of the episode.
While that's a terrible line, it serves a double purpose for this episode.
Yeah, it does.
And as such,
because it's Dexter's first kill.
Forgive it.
It's Dexter's first kill. It makes sense.
Yeah, I think the best line, and I could go either way too, but it's almost like when Deb's talking to her hooker friends, she's like, "I'm not a fucking whore," and the Beth's being like, "What's wrong with being a whore?"
Yeah, that's pretty funny too.
See, I was also going to nominate one of the hooker lines of "She's your pimp." Just Like, it's so concise, but it's so true.
Yeah.
I went with an exchange between Dex and Deb when they discovered that the victim was Cherry, not Sherry, Cherry, and that Deb knew her. And it's just a little exchange, but, you know, Dexter's all uncomfortable and doesn't know what to say to Deb because she said they were friends, and he says, "You want a hug?" And she just says, "Fuck off." You know, it's such a small exchange, but it just so encapsulates that relationship where he's like, "I don't know what to do. Want a hug?" And she's, "Fuck off."
Yeah, and it's another, like, he's watching her go through something that he has no understanding of, and he's just like, what do other people do in this situation?
And I just love those scenes.
Yeah. Well, because she hears it as sarcasm.
Right, because that's how it comes across, because he doesn't know what the hell he's saying or how to say it.
I'm sorry, do you want a hug?
And my worst line was the Butterface sequence. That was my worst, just because...
Not the Bronco, just the Butterface.
The Bronco I'm great with. That's great. That's, yeah. But the Butterface just it probably would have been okay with me if it had come from Masuka, but the fact that Angel said it just hurt my feelings.
Yeah. I can see that.
Worst line.
What about performance of the episode?
Oh, easily Denise Crosby.
Evil Denise Crosby.
Yeah, Evil Denise Crosby was awesome.
She did it. Her one shot. One shot on the show.
Dexter's wig. That was by far the performance of the episode.
Young Dexter's wig.
I second that too. Yeah.
That wig was working hard.
That, like, dead marsupial that they put on his head.
Emo Dexter.
Especially when he says, I can't do it without you," or whatever he says. It's such an emo line. It was really great.
Like, the acting quality went along with the quality of the wigs in that scene.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there's so many great performances in this. There's Deb talking to the hookers, which is always great. Dokes running down the street.
Mr. Tinker Stinkers, or
Mr.
whatever it
Tinker
is, sitting on the
Stinker.
chair purring.
Yeah, maybe he takes the cake. I think it's Nick Tinker
He's the
Stinker.
performance.
Yeah.
James Remore shivering.
What cracks me up, like, in retrospect about the whole James Remar, like the whole Harry and Dexter having that, like, coded message in front of Deb where she's just like, what are you talking about? What?
It's so
Dad?
not coded.
What?
Either. He's like, "You're a killer. You're gonna go kill this person. I'm gonna need you to be better about killing when I'm gone."
We don't talk about that. They do all of that, and then the revelation is that after he kills her, Harry lives another year. Like, they show him being discharged from the hospital. So it's like, you gotta wonder if they, like, get home and she's like, "Hey, Dad, do you remember that conversation that you and Dexter were having? What the hell are you talking about?"
And she went on to be a great detective.
Yeah.
That's...
Did she
You gotta get a
though?
lot of schooling for that. Well, no.
Every single episode, she's like, "Hey, Dex, what are you feeling here?"
Yeah.
And that's it for the first season.
What's your serial killer hunch?
Yeah.
Well, as the tornado warning sirens go off here in Lenexa,
I just heard that. I was like, oh, you guys need to seek shelter.
we're gonna. This is probably
Your
not.
life is more important.
It's fine.
This
It's
recording is not going to be very good with the wailing going on like that. But we have pretty much reached the end. Is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
Just those clown masks. Those were really smart ideas. The clown mask is always a good way to jump people. So.
Good stuff. Mix those with the Dexter emo wig, and you're set to go.
Absolutely.
And that's some nightmare fuel right there.
All right, well, that'll do it for us for Season 1, Episode 3, Pop and Cherry. We'll see you next time on Deeply Discussing Dexter. Thanks.